On this week's The Arthropologist, my guest is producer, director, and actor Shane Woodson. Shane, thank you so much for being on The Arthropologist. Now, we first met, I believe, in 2014 at the Mississippi International Film Festival. Um, I was a founding member, and it was our first year, and you were premiering Barracuda with your business partner at the time, Christy Oldham. I remember, yeah, man, I remember that movie just blew our doors off. You know, film festivals can sometimes be a real mixed bag. You never quite know what you're going to see, but your movie was spectacular. The acting, the production values were just top notch. And I knew I really wanted to meet you guys. So I struck up a conversation with you two, and we just really hit it off. And I invited you guys back to my home and studio, and it was great. My wife and I had so much time, so much fun meeting you and Christy. So that's how we met. And now I'm still here in Mississippi, but you're in LA. And let's see, are you doing something back there?
Yes, well, working on a movie now, a horror film in
Okay.
post-production,
Okay.
and it's almost done. It's looking really good. It's called 8 Days to Hell.
Okay. Is that with Eric Roberts?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. I saw something about that, and I thought, well, that's cool. I know Eric Roberts. He's a great actor. I mean, I don't know him personally. I know his work. Um,
Yes.
but now you're in LA, and I looked at your IMDb, and it's amazing. You've starred or co-starred. It says in over 90 feature films, television shows, commercials, and stage productions. And some of the talents you've worked with: Vanessa Williams, Cedric the Entertainer, John Voight, Melanie Griffith. You've worked with some amazing talent. And I was looking at just a short list of some of the things you've been in: Criminal Minds, Heroes, Longmire, Numbers, Two and a Half Men. That's a pretty impressive file of shows to be on. And tell me about, I did not realize you were in Resident Evil Extinction with Mila, Yo, jo, pronounce her name,
Oh, Mila Jovovich.
Mila
Right.
Jovovich. Yes. Now
Yeah.
it said you were Piggy. Um,
Right.
what was that character?
Well, at the beginning of the film, there's a distress signal, kind of a person that's an SOS signal sent out from this area in Las Vegas. So what we've done is we've baited Alice, Mila Jovovich's character, to come to get it's basically an ambush. So there were several of us, and I was one of the group of uh, bad guys, baiting her in. It was originally a much larger role, and they had, for whatever reason, had trimmed the scene down for the final cut. Which these things happen, which will lead me into another story of why I became an independent filmmaker. But I had fun playing that role. I snorted like a pig at times and did some pretty wild stuff. So one day that was filmed in Mexico City, soundstage there. So I was there for about a week. And one day arrived early on set. Jovovich was impersonating my character Piggy, so she was running around snorting and doing all this funny stuff. So that was a compliment. I got a kick out of that. But it's funny. Many years ago, I was in a movie called Johnson Family Vacation with Cedric the Entertainer and Vanessa Williams. I had what easily could have been a career-making role as far as it was an outlandish scene. It got cut out of the film. It made it to deleted scenes on the DVD. But that's when I decided to become an independent filmmaker because I didn't want my best work at the time. We're always evolving and hopefully getting a little better as we get older. But I decided, I just want to start telling my own stories, and that way I have better control of my fate as an actor with my performances. So I started writing, producing, and directing my first film was called Cain and Abel, a buddy cop comedy. We had Flavor Flav in it in one of the supporting roles, and it did well. It was back when we still had mom and pop video stores, Blockbusters across the country, so it made a pretty good amount of money for an independent film, and that was released in 2006. That was my first feature. I made my first short in 1998, a little short film. So I've actually been making films since 1998. That was the first one,
Wow.
independently. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's just get right into it then. I tell you what, we'll sort of start in a little bit of a chronological order. I know you're from Louisville, Kentucky. So,
Yes.
how does a kid from Louisville, Kentucky get to Hollywood and become an actor, director, and producer?
Well, I come from, my father was a writer his whole life, and one of my relatives is filmmaker D.W. Griffith. So growing up as a kid, my father, shared these stories with me. My grandmother was a painter, so I had the art gene in my being. Although I was more of into playing tennis, basketball, things like that. And what happened? We had a friend, a close family friend, my father's buddy, Jack Johnson. He was a character actor based in L.A. back in the '60s. He had done a lot of TV shows, a lot of stage, and I met Jack when I was about 8 years old in Louisville. So when I was in high school, I got into the theater class senior year. I used to cut school. I'd go to the racetrack. I would do anything, but I couldn't stand school. My parents were academics. I didn't like school until I got into the drama class, and then I loved it. So that was really where it was born. And then I jumped from, once I got out of high school, I landed my first paid acting gig, which actually made it on TV. PBS in Kentucky aired it. It was a kind of a mock trial. I played a young drunk driver, had to learn a lot of lines. They filmed it. That was my first paid acting gig when I was 18. And then after that, I did a lot of local theater. The family friend who became like the grandfather I never had, Jack Johnson, he taught me a lot of tricks of the trade. He said, you got a good look. You ought to do more stuff on camera. I did my first movie that was shot in the Kentucky area called The Congress of Wonders in 1993. So I turned 21 on set, had one of the leads. It was a well-made film that aired again on PBS. And then after that, did some local commercials, did an Army training film, KFC training films. And then in 1995, when I was 23, or 22, going on 23, decided to take a crack at Hollywood, moved to Los Angeles, and I've been here off and on ever since. So I came out here not knowing anyone, not having any connections, and just had to axe to the grind. I literally just had to, make ends meet. Wasn't easy. I bought a motorcycle to keep my bills down. Uh, I had my headshots, of course. Back then it was black and white headshots, and just going to auditions, everything you could do to get an audition, get an agent, kind of climb the ladder, do a good job. Hopefully, network, meet some people. But that was kind of how it started. I never, as a kid, thought I'd be an actor. I just kind of stumbled into it my senior year in high school, and it was. I knew when I did it the first time. I was in a musical, Cole Porter's Anything Goes. When I had that rush that I got on stage and the excitement, I said, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life." I just knew it. I had never been so excited about something as I was the acting. And I feel the same way about filmmaking. So I love both, and they go hand in hand. Never went to film school, but I got my training just by being in so many different productions, seeing how it's done. I learned a lot. Actually, a lot of what you do in theater crosses over uh, into the world of film in a lot of ways. And then you learn some tricks about the camera, but it's I wouldn't trade it for anything. It makes me happy. There are a lot of ups and downs, of course, but it's the greatest feeling in the world when it's the right kind of role. And when you're as a filmmaker, the payoff is you want your work, your best work, to reach as many people as possible. To me, that's the payoff. Is make something really well, and you want people to see your work and be entertained.
Right. Well, you've touched on a lot of things, and I want to sort of go back. And I tell you what, I do want to go back before I forget, because I don't want to gloss over this. You mentioned that your dad was a writer. He was actually a very impressive writer. He was nominated twice for a Pulitzer Prize. And I'm sure you're really proud of your dad. I think I saw that you lost him in 2011. So,
Yeah.
uh, would you just speak about him for a second? Because I think your listeners would be fascinated to hear just a little bit about your dad and what kind of guy he was.
Well, he was my best friend. He was. Um, I was an only child, so I didn't have any brothers or sisters, and we did so many fun things together. We would go to the racetrack, we would go to auction houses. He was an art dealer on the side, so we always had some interesting pieces in the house. Uh, signed Picasso limited edition lithographs, artist proofs. We had some Renoir etchings. We had all kinds of interesting art growing up. That in itself was always fun. But what was really cool when I was, let's see, this would have been in 1998. He wrote a play because I was doing a lot of theater at the time, and he wrote a play called The Dodge, which was about draft dodging, about the Vietnam War, and these three best friends that grew up in a small town in Kentucky, all of which have been drafted to the Vietnam War. So there's a motorcycle gang in the story, the leader of which is a former Medal of Honor winner. So he wrote the play, I directed it and played one of the main roles, and that was actually one of the two Pulitzer nominations was for that play. So that was a real highlight for him, and it was great for me because as my dad, he's my best friend, and he wrote it. So it was super cool to see that come to life and to get that kind of attention. Recently, I made a movie called Tidy Thames, which is an adaptation of my father's other play that he wrote called The Closer. We changed the name to Tidy Thames when he was in the hospital in 2011, not doing well. I promised him. I said, "Daddy, I'm gonna make Tidy Thames. If it's the last thing I ever do, I don't know how I'm gonna get the money, how I'm gonna make it, but I want it to be the best film I've made, and I know he would be so happy and so proud if he could have seen how it came out. It would have been a real joy for him. It's very bittersweet for me because I love how the film came together. We got a distribution deal. It's out there, but it's bittersweet because he never um, got to see it. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you shared that with us because, uh, I don't like to focus too much on myself, but uh, our family has a production company that we started years ago and that our son runs, and it's so much fun to work with him on a movie or a television commercial. We'll do different jobs, but it really means a lot working with your family in the industry. And I kind of thought that was the case with you, but I wanted to hear your story, and that's just amazing that was that collaborative effort that you guys did together.
It was wonderful. The play, The Closer, which became Tidy Thames, was originally 46 pages, and what I ended up doing is I had it. It was really cool how it came out, an equal 46 pages of new pages. So together we had 92 pages, and as I knew him so well, I that and his characters and what he had laid out, that I just drew from my own experiences from these. It's a very eclectic story, and the characters are kind of larger than life. So just I had a lot of fun. It was a way of communicating with him again without him, being here.
Right.
Uh, so it was a very fun experience to do that. Again, bittersweet, but it was a lovely experience, and I'm just glad my mother was she worked with my father in the sense she more of in an editorial sense. They met on a newspaper back in 1970 in Louisville. She was a reporter and he was the managing editor, and so she told me, and it meant a lot to me when she said your daddy'd be very proud. He would really he would really love Tidy Tim. So that makes me feel good, and
Nice.
that's Bill, and that's what's beautiful about art. Being an artist yourself, it's the only thing that's lasting in life. Van Gogh's been gone for all the great painters, and musicians, writers, poets. You know, it's been gone for years, but their work lives on. So that's what's that's what's great about art. It's and you can always learn from it, and you can always it's just it's an awesome thing. It really is. It takes you out of yourself, and it's a positive, enriching uh, thing. So
Right. So now, when you were talking earlier, you were saying you just sort of picked up and moved to LA. That, I mean, you'd been in, doing theater and things like that in Louisville, but and a little bit of, I think, TV commercials, but you really didn't go to school for this. You didn't go to film school or anything like that. You just sort of walked in and tried to get into the industry through the side
yeah,
door. And that's very much the way I've gotten into the film industry. I certainly did not go to school for it and had no conception that I'd ever be in it.
hmm
And just by hook and crook, wound up getting into it. Um,
hmm
but there are plenty of film schools out there, and I know with for some of my listeners, there'll be young people or even older people who might want to get into the industry.
hmm
How do you have an opinion? If someone were to ask your advice, like Shane, how do I get into the movie industry? What would you tell them?
uh, no matter if you want to be an actor or if you want to be a director, I would say the same thing to everyone is to just jump in. Just get a camera. If you want to make movies, these days you can just use your cell phone. It's quite amazing. But start take baby steps first. Start small. If you want to be a filmmaker, say you have a favorite story or favorite film, an original story you want to tell of your own. Start small with a short subject, maybe something 2 to 5 minutes long, and come up with your basic beginning, middle, and end, and spend some time meditatively, just sort of visualizing what you've written. You got to write a little script, and then as you wrote it, what pictures did you see in your mind? So draw those, or make notations, or find similar pictures on the internet or in books, and then literally go capture those images. And if you can't edit, there are people that can, but you just kind of. My advice would be just to do it. That's one approach. If you've always wanted to act, then find a local community theater that's holding auditions, or there's so many things you can do. There's so many venues on the internet where you can show your work and share your work. So I would say literally just jump in with both feet and do it. Uh, Certainly, the other approach would be, and I don't think there's any right or wrong approach. If you have the desire to do it, yeah, you can take acting classes. You can go to film schools. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. Age is just a number. So I don't think there's any right or wrong approach to it. It's just taking that first step and committing yourself to doing it. If the want is there, then you'll do it. And
Right.
something my father taught me years ago about writing, he said, if you have an idea, don't uh, don't spend your time telling it to everyone, and then it'll take the motivation away. Keep it to yourself and get it on the paper. And that helped me tremendously when he told me that, because you can talk your idea out. You can get the high by telling 8 or 10 friends, and they're like, oh, Shane, that's a great idea. Wow, wow, wow. And then, then you never do it. So, and I would say the same thing about acting. If you really want to act, then just do it. Even if it starts out doing impersonations for family member and friends, if it starts out that, um, um, in a very simple manner like that, but then it's just going to grow. You're going to get better, and it's practice. The more we practice something, the better we get at it. That's the
Right.
other thing. So same thing with sports. If you're going to be good at basketball or baseball or tennis or football or whatever, you're going to have to get your practice in, and then you're going to have to, if you're good at it, then get some professional training,
Right.
and then it just gets better and better. But I would just say to anyone out there that wants to be an actor or a filmmaker, just start doing it. It's really not that hard.
Now, and what's real interesting, now you're not nearly as old as I am, but even in your lifetime, you know how the industry has changed. And back when I was a kid, especially, but even when you were a kid, there weren't that many productions being shot outside of Hollywood or LA.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
now, oh my gosh, it's everywhere.
Right.
And in my experience, just getting on set, even if you're a PA, a production assistant, just getting coffee, fetching stuff. It gets you in. And I want you to speak about this because it's been my experience that the movie industry is all about relationships. It is one of the most relationship driven industries around. And you
Hmm.
can get on set being a PA, and which is really about the lowest job there is.
Hmm.
And but if you've got skills for something else, there's that old saying in dating, there's Mr. Right and there's Mr. Right now. And
Hmm.
if the director needs something and all of a sudden they realize you can do it, you're hired, and that could be the start of a career. Um,
Hmm.
have you experienced some of that? Could you talk about that where just being on set has made, even if it was a job you didn't necessarily want, but it led to more things?
Well, it's interesting. Um, the experience I've had with that has been more from the standpoint of when I'm directing. If I see someone on set could have a very small part, or not even a role at all. I had a guy, for example, a young man who was a PA in my first feature film, but he had a good attitude, and he had a look on camera that I saw to where he could play one of the smaller roles. And I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he was great. So you have crossovers all the time. You have people that are um, they're hired to be on set for one job and end up doing something else at an elevated position. So my own experience as an actor, having been on set and all the projects I've been in, the best thing you can do as an actor is show up on time with a great attitude, arrive with a smile on your face, a smile on your face when you leave set, your last day on set. Build bridges, don't burn them down. And the quickest way to not work in Los Angeles, because as big as this city is, as small as the industry is, it's a strange thing. Anyone who's a troublemaker, word gets around really fast. So you got to just have a good attitude, do your work, and know your place. If you're there to act, just act. Don't throw your 2 cents in on how to direct, even though you could be a filmmaker or have aspirations to do other positions. Just show up, do your job well, and that will keep you coming back for more jobs. The director will remember you, maybe refer you to another friend who's a filmmaker or producer, and that's one of the easiest ways to get future jobs, is to just do your job well and have a good attitude. Attitude's everything. I won't cast actors that have a bad attitude, or I'm able to deem could be troublemakers in any way. The job of a true independent filmmaker is hard enough as it is without, dealing with troublemakers. But that's been my experience with that, with being on set and, having people jump into other positions. I tend to hire multitaskers, the people I work with. My director of photography that I've been working with regularly, he also he can do his own lighting, so it simplifies things. You don't have to have as many people on set. My production sound man, he's a one-man wrecking crew. He has his 6 lavs, he has his boom, he has his mixer right there, so it's very quick, very simple. My AD/storyboard artist also is a data transfer guy. So I have a small crew of multitaskers.
Wow.
And as opposed to big budget Hollywood films, there's a lot of waste. Because they have huge budgets, you have a lot of people standing around, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not coming down on them. It's just I don't have the resources they have financially, so I hire guys and gals that multitask. So we're lean and mean, and there's no waste. I know what I want when I'm going into a scene, so I'm able to shoot it very quickly, efficiently, get a lot of coverage, which is always good for editing. Sometimes what you have in your mind as a filmmaker, most of the time works, but not always. So you have to keep an open mind. And editing, the more films you make, the more you realize it's about choices. Have different variations on the actors' performances. You can have one a little more animated. You can have one a little more realistic. It depends on the scene, but choices are good. And when you get to the editing of your film, you want to have a lot of coverage, and you want to have the ability to potentially shape the scene in a different way, a way you may not originally thought would work might actually work the best. So it's good to keep an open mind. Every step of the way. Have fun, be prepared, and keep an open mind.
Right. Well, since we're in this direction, I think your production company is called Pegasus Flying Films. Is that right?
You got it. That's it.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Pegasus Flying came to be. I got the name from having grown up in Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby. First Saturday of May every year, and 1 week prior to Derby Day, we have what's called the Pegasus Parade. So the winged Pegasus, and you've got the parade, you've got the steamboat race, Belle's Louisville versus usually the Delta Queen. We have the balloon race, great balloon race. So we have all these things going on Derby week, but the Pegasus Parade is what kicks it off. So coming from horse country in Louisville, and Kentucky is where most of the horse breeding is done in the state. So that's why I chose Pegasus with because of the Pegasus Parade and because of my background. My father was also, he used to write for the Daily Racing Forum, and he had his own tip sheet called Lucky's Best Bets at Churchill Downs. So I used to, as a kid, I used to sell tip sheets outside Churchill Downs to make a few bucks. And so that was how I decided to pay homage to my hometown and to my background. I wanted to be a racetrack announcer at one point before I got into acting. So these are the reasons why I chose Pegasus Flying. And yeah,
what genre of films do you tend to make?
I've made 5 features. The first was a urban comedy. The second was a social message film, Barracuda, we spoke of earlier.
Right.
The third film I made was called The Legend of Black Annie, horror film. The fourth film was the comedy Tidy Thames, which is kind of a film anyone can watch. It's kind of more along the lines of a PG-13, which I'd never made something like that. My current film is a horror anthology, 8 Days to Hell. So each film has been different. 2 horror films, however, one is a based on urban legend. The current one is a horror anthology. The 2 comedies are different in a sense. One's urban comedy, and then the other one is more of a it's just kind of an eclectic film. So they've all been a little different, and I like that. I'd like to make a Western one day. I'd like to possibly make a children's animated story, bring that to life that my father wrote. So I like to do different things. I like to mix it up.
Okay.
So
Well, then in general, all things being equal, uh, it seems like you're just whatever project comes up at the time that you're really kind of open to any
just
genre.
yeah. As long as I'm passionate about the story, if I believe in the story, it doesn't matter what it's about. As long as it has value, and I feel it will entertain in a clean and good way, then I'm interested in it. I have to really believe in it though, because it's the way I do it is so hard, and it always takes 2 or 3 years of work, um, from fundraising to pre-production to production to post-production to the film festival and or marketing stage, and then to getting a deal. So it's I've never had children, but the films are kind of my kids in a weird way, I guess you could say, because it's so hard. Each one requires so much, and as I've gotten older, it's certainly not gotten any easier to
Is
do
there
this stuff.
is there one genre of film more difficult to make than other, or one easier to make than another?
I actually probably my favorite thing is comedy. I really enjoy making comedies because as hard as it is, at least when you're acting and when you're directing and you're dealing with funny subject matter or what you hope is funny, uh, there's a lightheartedness to that's a good escape from the rigors and the pain of making a film.
Yeah.
When you're making a horror film, well, it's kind of a horror to make a film in the first place. So when what you're bringing to the screen is more horror and gore and whatever, it's like you never get a respite. You never get a break from it. So I've had more fun doing the comedies. However, at the end of the day, it's really how it looks is what matters when you're done with it. So
Right. Well, it sounds like so you're an actor, you're a director, you're a bunch of things, but you're also a producer and an executive producer for your films, right?
yeah, I've pretty much done. I've had to do, which I don't enjoy because of low budgets. I have to. I've written or co-written all the stories. I've directed them all. The 5 features I've made. I either play a lead role or a major supporting role. I do the storyboards. I do the casting. I've built sets. I've done wardrobe. I've done props. I've done I do all the contracts. I pay all the bills. I raise the money. I hire the entire team of camera department as well as post-production. I'm there every step of the way of editing, making the decisions on that, on the music, all the contracts for music. And then it's up to me to take the film to the film festivals, to get in, to market, and I'm the man who delivers to the distributor, which is a hard thing to do, the deliverables. I do all that. So I pretty much am in charge of every step of the way, from raising the first dollar to signing on the dotted line at the end. So I do about 10 or 12 positions, and that's what takes its toll. Directing is easy, acting is easy. The producing duties are gruesome, are my least favorite thing to do.
Yes, my son is a producer, an executive producer, and he excels at it. He's working on some really big productions.
Yeah,
I help him sometimes, sort of as an assistant, and I find producing to be the least tasteful aspect of the entire business. It's just so hard. I mean,
it
just
is.
you're dealing with money, you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with subtleties and nuances in law sometimes as far as raising
Yeah,
money, and
yeah,
it just, oh my gosh, it'll just make you old before your time, and it
yeah.
takes a special person to do all of that. So my hat's off to you on that. And it's a real, well, I mean, in the big world, producers and executive producers are the ones who make the most money for them, except
Yeah.
for maybe the star. But oh my gosh, most people don't know what they do, and I don't think you even go to school for that. It's not like you have executive producer class, 101 or something. It's
It's a hard thing to do. It's a dirty job, but
yeah,
someone has to do it.
yeah,
Uh, at times it can be easy. I guess I wouldn't. Producing would be the last thing I would ever want to do.
yeah,
It wouldn't be so bad if that was all I was doing. But when you wrap it all together, and then even location scouting, getting the locations, every last detail, and then being the person, if there's a problem, they call out my name,
yeah.
Shane, Shane, Shane. Here we go. So what fire do I have to put out now?
Right.
Um,
Um,
yeah, it's not easy, but
along
it's necessary.
along these lines, this is a good segue. What are your hours and days like when you're in full production mode? So,
Oh wow. When I'm in full production mode, it's pretty rough. The roughest for me, and I really have to be mentally and physically in top shape. It's almost like training for the Olympics for me. I'll start eating really healthy foods, doing push-ups, running 15, 20 miles a week. This is usually what I do before a feature. I really work myself out to literally make it through the 3 weeks. I usually, the days, like for example, on Tidy Thames, I played the lead in the film. I directed and did every other position. So my days would start at 4 a.m. and go till about midnight. So I had 20-hour days for 3 weeks in a row, and it really takes its toll. You just it's so hard when your head hits the pillow,
right.
and you only have 2, 3, 4 hours sleep. It's so hard to get yourself up off the mat and go in for another round. You feel like you're a boxer getting punched for another day, and at the end of it you feel punch drunk. At the end of it, I remember the feeling I always have is it's the next day after I've finally gotten some rest, when I have to return equipment, or I have to you feel like you've just been released. I've never been in prison, but it's like you've been just released from jail, or being locked up.
Yeah.
And there's a feeling of euphoria in that sense that, chains and shackles you're loose from. But then there's also the fatigue. So it's a weird feeling. You're seeing the sunlight again. You're smelling fresh air, and it's a good feeling actually. It's weird to describe the feeling of freedom.
Yeah. Unless the listeners think, well, I mean, he's working all these different jobs. Basically, it's been my experience and the experience of everyone I've ever talked to that if you work in the movie industry, a 12-hour day is average or a short day. 14, 16-hour days are common, 6 days a
Yeah,
week for
yeah.
2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And it's just absolutely brutal. Uh,
It's brutal. It's brutal. That's the best way to describe it. It's brutal. The longest I've ever been up is 62 hours straight on my first feature, Cain and Abel. I had a run of basically 3 days in a row that I never slept. I never stopped. I literally, had a 22-hour day of filming, a 21-hour day of filming, a 20-hour day of filming, and got no rest in between because I was prepping for the very next day. And at the end of that, I had a VW van at the time, a 1971, that was my production vehicle slash it was one of the props in the film. And I'm driving that thing back to my apartment in Hollywood, and I literally had to slap myself across the face about every 30 seconds to stay awake, to shift it through the gears and get it home safely. That's how exhausted I was. And at the time, I was much younger. So that's how exhausted I was. Really, really difficult.
how does that affect your family life?
Well, if I had a wife and kids, it probably would have led to a divorce years ago. But I have never been married. I've been in some long-term relationships, but um, it put a lot of strain on some of the relationships. I'll say that, because it's time you should spend with your gal, yet again producer related duties or casting. There's always something. So um, it's hard to date a woman in the industry as a filmmaker because you can never get away from it, the industry. So yet the gals in the industry that I've met are understand me the best of what I go through. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah, I worked on a movie a number of years ago that had a young guy who was who was the gaffer, and he was real good. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the requirements that he had was that his girlfriend, you had to hire her too, and she
Hmm.
worked in props or wardrobe, something like that. So
Yeah.
I thought, what a wise, smart young man that he realizes that if he wants a relationship, they're going to have to do it together. So I thought that was pretty cool. Um,
That was a cool thing to do, and that is smart.
yeah,
That
yeah,
way you get to be around one another,
yeah. Of course,
and
he
yeah,
was
that is
he was
smart.
super talented. He was the I talked to the cinematographer for a few minutes, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's a hot shot. He's really something else." So he was able to write his own ticket a little bit and sort of make that demand. Um,
Yeah.
and I want to ask you about for some of the listeners who might again be thinking about getting into the industry. How do you
Mhm.
get through the hard times? You know, there are times where there's either no work, slow work, or work, but not really what you want. So, you know, how do you grapple with that and get through those times?
You have to have a side hustle. What's helped me is I own some property out of state, rental property, and I get a that's helped me. That's one thing. The other thing is I restore classic cars and motorcycles on the side. I'm good with my hands. It's something that I enjoy. I've always been a classic car kind of guy. So my advice would be find something you really dig that you're able to dictate your own hours, or it can be a part-time job as long as there's flexibility, as long as they understand that you need to leave for an audition or you're out of town for a couple of weeks on an acting job. What's worked best for me is the rental property because I know how to keep them rented, find good tenants, do most of the repairs myself, the upkeep, and then the classic cars. It's just such a passion of mine. I'm always able to make a little bit of money off them, and I enjoy doing it. And it's something I set my own schedule. So I've been cast in a movie that shoots in Kentucky in a few weeks, so I have the flexibility to leave town and do that. And then when I come back, I can finish. I'm working on a '62 Ford Ranchero. I'm going to restore to flip. So I would say find something that's agreeable to you, that you don't mind doing, and that's steady. Yet at any given point, you can walk away from it for a few weeks or a month, or even a few months, and then come back to it. That
Yeah,
seems to be the best thing to do,
yeah,
in my opinion.
and that's been real helpful for me in that it's real funny. I have sort of an odd position where when I'm on movie sets, people will say, "Is this what you do full time?" And I'll say, "Well, no, actually, my real job is I'm an artist illustrator." But
Hmm.
sometimes when the art or illustration is slow, on that side, people will say, "Well, what do you do when things are slow?" "Oh, I go work in movies or I work in the television industry." So it, uh, yeah, that's my experience too. That sometimes things is just it gets slow in one area, and having jobs like you're talking about, where you've got that flexibility, then you can up and leave for weeks or sometimes months at a time. I've got written here, you worked on The Young and the Restless. Did you do that for
Yeah,
very long?
I was on 8 episodes of
Okay,
Young and the Restless.
and where
Yeah.
that plays into this is, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but soap operas have a reputation of being brutal even in the film industry. That a lot of people is just like, I can't do soap operas. It's just never ending. Um, did you sort of see that it would be like, if you get into this, you're really committed to.
Well, yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I actually wouldn't mind doing more of it. I had a recurring role on a soap opera called Passions, which was on NBC some years ago, and I really had fun. I played a bumbling security guard. There were two of us, myself and my good friend Britt Prentice, who's actually been in a lot of my films. He's a very funny guy. So I really enjoyed that experience, and I was like, I actually wouldn't mind doing this regularly. So to me, it was, I think because of, having grown up doing so much theater, it's, it's, they have multiple cameras. They usually have 4 or 5 cameras going. And as long as you know your lines, is you literally on action, you do it and they're moving on. As long as there wasn't a major flub, it's that quick,
Well,
which is really cool. And in the world of film, it's painstaking. I mean, you might do on one camera setup, you might do 20, 30, 40, 50 takes. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me as an actor, and I've done that as a director. Either someone can't get the line, they're not delivering it the way you want it. It's an important moment, or there are technical difficulties, or a combination thereof. So, but with soap operas, as long as you know your lines, it goes really fast, and it's kind of fun because you get the sense of it's more like live theater, you know. You get that feel. Um, so
yeah.
I actually enjoyed it all the times I did it.
Well, and the other positive is that I don't know about you. This may not bother you, but I like going into a closed set that's inside, out of the weather. It's the same place over and over again, and it's
Mhm.
not like, okay, well, we're going to be out, take a bus out into the boonies
Yeah.
and using porto potties, and you're
Mhm.
there all day long, and then you got to take a bus all the way back into town. And
Mhm.
it's just nice having, and you're outside in the cold, in the mud, in the yuck. There's a lot that I would see
Mhm.
would be a positive for soap operas, because that's,
Mhm.
I guess they have occasional outside scenes, but for the most part, they're inside in regular ish
Yeah,
hours.
it's pretty much. We shot that at CBS Television City, where they shoot The Price is Right, and that was where we did The Young and the Restless. And then Passions was actually filmed on the CBS Radford lot where they used to shoot Gilligan's Island back in the '60s.
Ah, awesome.
So that was really cool. They've actually got a street called Gilligan's Island Way. I think there's it's like soundstage number two, which is still there,
Yeah,
where they shot a lot of the stuff, and then where the lagoon was is now a parking lot, but it's called the Lagoon Parking Lot. So these are all cool things as an actor when you're walking on historic grounds like that. It's really fun.
yeah,
Um, it's neat, but yeah, I agree with you. The comfort of doing a soap opera is you're taking the element. The elements can be your enemy. You know, wind for sound, heat for the actors and crew in extreme heat like desert heat. You can have heat strokes. There are a lot of things that can happen, or just it can rain out of the blue. A lot of things can go wrong, but on a sound stage, it's very controlled. So you're taking a lot of the potential problems out of the equation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking about when you got started, what were some of the greatest challenges for you to be able to work consistently? You know, to know that um, I know you have your side gigs, but there's a difference between doing side gigs occasionally and just a complete drought of work. Um, uh, what were some of the biggest challenges you had uh, to getting known enough where you could work, somewhat consistently?
Well, initially it was figuring out how to get in the Screen Actors Guild because I had to get in the guild to have opportunities at the big stuff, at the good stuff. So that was an early challenge. Uh, keeping the bills down. I had a roommate. Uh, Fortunately, just a like a brother to me. We'll always be friends. I actually talked to him earlier today, my friend Gene, about the NCAA basketball pairings, but that helped. Yeah, I had a motorcycle to keep the bills down. So really early on, you gotta really watch where you spend the money. You gotta really have a super lean budget. And when you do get an acting job, maybe you get a few $1,000s out of it, whatever you get, you gotta pretend that money doesn't exist and put it in savings or put it in the bank, and you can't blow it. You go buy a flat screen TV or a used car or whatever, or it'll be gone, and then you'll be in worse shape than you were before you got it. So you got to really, yeah, you have to invest. You have to invest in better pictures. You got to keep your pictures updated, your headshots. You got to have a website, if you're an actor, and you got to be on a lot of all the casting websites. Keep everything current. You got to have your reels on there. So really, it's the financial end of it is the hardest thing to juggle in the first. It might not even be the first year, 2 or 3 years. It might take 10 years or longer. It can to get any kind of good traction going. So for some people, it never happens. You can be. It's not good enough to be talented, but you got to somehow get plugged in. And I was very plugged into the acting some years ago. I was doing a lot of stuff, but I unplugged myself to make my independent films, which was a big chance, and it's certainly paid off artistically, but it's you can't do everything. There's only so much time in the day, so you just have to prioritize what's important to you at that time in your life and go all in on that.
One of the things I wanted to do was see if you had any kind of on-set stories or something like that, something
Oh yeah.
really fun, like your most embarrassing or most dangerous or surprising uh, thing to happen to you on set or something like that.
Okay. Oh yeah. I've got a lot of things that have happened. So I I remember one time I was filming Cain and Abel, my first feature, and I played an undercover cop, John Abel. My best friend in the film is Malcolm Cain, and the scene we were filming. Two streetwalkers were busting. We have them in the back seat of a '69 Chevy Impala, and we're basically pull out the badge. We're trying to get information out of them on someone in the story. Well, they were dressed in a very provocative manner, of course, high heels, mini skirts, a lot of makeup, and a group of gang members. We were in a rough neighborhood in Hollywood. Were really getting a kick out of watching the scene, but they weren't causing problems. They were just watching across the street as we were filming. Well, one of the gals really got their attention. I started whistling at her and making some kind of inappropriate comments, and she flew off the handle. She flipped them the bird. It escalated very quickly, and I think a couple of these guys were more than likely armed. So I had to, my buddy and I, we calmed the situation down really fast. We apologized, on behalf of our actress that was not making things easier. And I said, okay, we're breaking camp. we're
Yeah.
we're going to a different location right now, and we're going to pick up the rest of this scene in a different part of town. That could have been a big problem. Another thing that happened on 8 Days to Hell filming, we were filming again in a rough area of downtown Los Angeles, uh, a strangling scene. So one of the leads in the film is strangled by one of the other leads, and a person was screaming bloody murder out of a high-rise apartment building. I mean, you wouldn't have believed the sounds that were coming. I don't know what was going on in this building, and probably within a few minutes, helicopters were all over the area. The helicopters' spotlights were on our car. They were focused on us. A SWAT team was on the way, and my cameraman held up his camera to show we don't have a weapon. It's a movie camera. We're filmmakers, but they were coming after us. So again, I broke camp, and for the next probably hour or so, there's helicopters everywhere, and
Wow.
I don't know if it was a misunderstanding. Maybe there was a crazy person was certainly in this apartment building. They probably were called to take care of that and wondered why we were there, and it looks like someone's getting strangled in a car. I don't know, but that was unsettling. Um, there have been things with equipment. I remember one day we had lights everywhere, old Fresnel lights that burn a lot of electricity, the power cords all over the sidewalks, and it just randomly starts to rain. There was not rain in the forecast, so now you worry about someone getting electrocuted.
Wow.
We've had picture cars break down in the middle of filmmaking, of course, because they're older. We've had keys locked in picture cars when we literally have to get one more shot. We shot a scene in an actual prison in Barracuda, So some of the guys behind bars were spitting and trying to claw at the lead actress. It's there have been so many things that have happened with actors, or can be temperamental. You know, they can storm off set, they can throw hissy fits. Uh, Pretty much have experienced a lot of challenges
Yeah.
throughout the years. Yeah, those are some of them.
Yeah. Of all the famous people you've worked with, who did you enjoy working with the most?
Oh, let's see. Um, Mr. T was great. Eric Roberts was great. Flavor Flav was great. Um, Mila Jovovich was great. Uh, gosh, I've had pretty good experiences actually with all the celebrities I've worked with. Joe Mantegna was a very nice guy. Um, I haven't had a bad experience actually along those lines.
Oh,
You
nice.
know, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. John Voight is a great guy. James Caan. Um, they've all. I haven't had a bad experience with any of the celebrities I've worked with. They've all been very classy and just on point. It's been a really good experience.
Have you got any maybe regrets or missteps, miss opportunities that looking back, you go, wow, if I had known then what I know now, I would have done things a little bit differently and my career might would have been a little bit better or things would have just, turned out a little bit different.
There's really only been a couple of things. One thing that comes to mind is I was up for one of the main roles of the TV show Sons of Anarchy, and I had just done Resident Evil Extinction, Zodiac, and a movie with many drivers. So I was on a hot streak, and I had an opportunity to play the role of Opie on
Oh,
Sons of Anarchy,
oh, wow.
and had just gotten into a major argument with my girlfriend at the time, literally. And this was a pattern. Whenever I would have a major audition or opportunity at something, for whatever reason, she would choose to instigate a major argument, which was always it's hard enough as it is to nail a major audition, but I was not in the best frame of mind, unfortunately, which is my own fault. I can't blame someone else. But going into that one, and I had ridden my motorcycle. I had a classic motorcycle at the time, so I was, to help, you know, be in the vibe all the way of the character. And I just was a little off that day. I usually do very well at auditions, but I was just a little bit off that day and not really in the zone like I should have been. And unfortunately, that would have been a career maker right there.
Oh, yeah.
Um, there really haven't been too many times I've dropped the ball. It wasn't a bad audition. It just, to get something like that, it's got to be the best of the best. You got to be on your A game. I was a little off that day, so I don't have any regrets though about anything because it's part of what makes us who we are today,
Right.
and I'm accepting of that.
Yeah.
So that's really one of the few things that comes to mind. Um,
Okay.
was that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and well, of course, like we established earlier, you're in LA. Are you planning on staying in LA?
That's a little bit up in the air right now. I've got um, I've got a duplex in Kentucky and a couple other pieces of property. I kind of have the one house set up to move back to someday. I figure I'll probably retire in my hometown, and I have unfinished business in LA. I'm finishing my movie, which should be done by May 1st completely. The trailer's done. All we're doing color correction now and the sound work. So I'm going to kind of see where things are at when I get this movie done. It depends on what kind of deal I can get for it. If I can get a good deal for the movie, I would be inclined to stay longer and probably segue into, landing some major acting roles, because it's a lot easier for me just to act than it is to make another truly independent feature film.
Right.
So it's a little in the air. I have to see how the current film does. I know I'll find a home for it. It'll get a distribution deal, but for it to do what I want it to do, it's going to have to go with a major label. It's going to have to go with a big company that can actually has the funding and the deep pockets to promote it, because no film, no matter how good it is going to be very successful without proper promotion. So it's a little in the air. I don't have plans to leave LA, but I will at some point.
Would you advise any person who's looking to get into film coming to LA, or would you suggest them staying where they're at or going to New Orleans or Atlanta?
Well, if they're hell bent on being a film and television actor, if that's what they're hell bent on, for years I would have said come here. Now I would say try Atlanta, try a smaller market where you're going to be a bigger fish, or could be a bigger fish in a little pond. I would say try that first, see how you like it, and before you make the plunge into the ocean out here, because it's not the automatic that it used to be, and it's never been an automatic out here, but it's really so much runaway production in this town. The work is simply not here the way it used to be, and the magnitude that it used. It's still here. This is still the epicenter. I would advise to do as much as you can in your area of the country or world. Do as much as you can. Once you feel that you've outgrown that and you're hell bent on film and TV as an actor, then at that point come out here. Don't come out here unprepared. Come out here already having done as much as you could do in your part of the world or country, and then come here. And come here with your head screwed on straight. Know that you're going to have to keep your expenses low, and come here with a plan. Don't come here on a whim. The first time I came here, I didn't have a good enough plan. I had to leave, and then I came back in 1999, well prepared,
Right.
and I was able to deal with it. So that would be my advice.
Okay. All right. Well, Shane, this was amazing. I thank you so much for being on the Arthropologist. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
Yeah, go to PegasusFlyingFilms.com for updates on all the films, when 8 Days to Hell is going to come out, and where you can get it. It'll show you where you can get Tidy Tim's, the other films, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, again, Shane, thank you so much for being on the Arthropologist. I'm going to put a link both on my YouTube channel and the podcast to Pegasus Film. What is it?
PegasusFlyingFilms.com.
Pegasus PegasusFlyingFilms.com, and
Yes.
I'll get people steered in your direction. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it was an honor, Bill. Thank you for having me, and I had a great time. It's been wonderful.
All right. Well, I'm Bill Wilson, and I'm the Arthropologist. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Arthropologist, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more episodes like this, think about subscribing. I'm Bill Wilson, and I'm the Arthropologist.